Alright, so just a few weeks ago we did a very simple 15-minute gnome, and today we're going to be stepping it up a notch with a more complicated and yet not all that much more challenging, realistic kind of gnome. So he's got closed eyes, he's got a beard, some more detail on his hat. This guy's a little bit more complicated, and I hope you enjoy it. It's not that much harder, so give it a shot. Let's get into it. Alright, so I'm working with a piece of basswood that's approximately 2 inches by 2 inches by 3.5 inches, and I've cut that diagonally, so it makes it a little bit easier to work with and a little less wood to have to remove. I'm also using a knife. This is an 1 5/16" knife made by Beavercraft blades. I haven't tried this one yet, so I'm excited to give it a shot. Look at the figuring on that. I'm going to use a ruler as well. This is just a standard American metric ruler, and a veiner. This is a 3mm veiner, and I'll be using this a little bit at the end, maybe on the eyes as well. It's not necessary you have the veiner, but it is nice. So an 1/8 inch or 3mm veiner is perfect for this project. I'll put that in, bring that in later. And then of course just a little stubby pencil. And most importantly, hot cup of joe. Alright, so to start this project I'm going to take the ruler and mark about halfway down from the top of this piece. Let's say 1 3/4 inches, or about 44 mils. Just a little line there. And once again, with these guys, sort of hat guys, if you will, they have they don't have a straight sort of hat that wouldn't look natural. So I'm going to start by drawing kind of a U shape. So before I get too far with this, I'm going to take the edges off of the block. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to take the tool, go straight in with the knife, and make a little notch. Okay. Just like so. Then I'm going to come around, and I'm going to take that notch, I'm going to follow that kind of upside down U shape that I drew, and just carve it all the way down. Like so. You gotta love this sound of the blade moving through basswood. I'm not sure that any wood quite sounds as satisfying as a blade going through basswood. There's just something about it. So I'm taking that line all the way down, like so. And you see that? Just curving downward. This is the first step. The next step is I'm going to take the blade and I'm going to start to take off this corner and this corner. So I'm going to start paring that down, taking little chips out at a time, not getting too carried away. The same thing on the other side. Now, per usual, I do recommend that you wear a glove when you're carving this. It's dangerous stuff here, so it's not worth playing around, cutting yourself. It's definitely worth using a glove on the non-dominant hand or your carving hand. Okay, just narrowing this up. Alright. I'm going to give this little guy a touch up here. It looks like he needs it. And giving you a quick lesson on stropping. So things that I see people do wrong when they're stropping is they always end up lifting up the blade. Hopefully you can see that. And you don't want to do that. You want to keep it as flat to the bevel as possible. If you have a good carving knife, you've got a flat bevel, flat grind on there. That means just one angle here. And you're going to keep it flat. No tilting upward, flat on the bevel. And it's actually easier to do. Just keep a little pressure on the blade as you're dragging it across. And just like so, you'll get rid of any kind of minor checks or little scratchy parts or bent edges of the blade. So I do this often when I'm carving basswood or doing a whittle. Alright, set this aside for now. Get it out of my way. Much better. Yeah, nice. All it needed was a little stropping. Alright, so I'm going to take a little out of the top here corner as well. So I'm just tapering this whole thing. Almost like I'm treating the top of his head like a pencil. Like I'm sharpening a pencil. Okay. You'll notice that the wood tends to behave better going in a certain direction as opposed to another. And there's a reason for this. It might take a bit of explaining. But the grain fibers run together like straws. Right? They go up and down the wood. And so that's on a very micro level if you were to look at this under a microscope. It's hard to see that, but the point is you start to move downhill, right? You start to cut so that the bundle of fibers are compressed. You don't get the splitting that you do when you go downhill and push those fibers apart. That's when you start to get tearing. So generally speaking, when you're moving with the grain, you want to be skating downhill so that you're not creating that chip out or that flaking, a separation of the bundle of fibers or bundle of straws that is the grain. So hopefully I'm not getting too technical too early, scaring you beginners, but it's just important to try to carve downhill as much as you can, again, when you're carving with the grain. That's the main thing to notice. Okay, so you can see I'm just rounding this guy out, top of his head. And I'm a little bit more aggressive than you should probably be when you're starting out here. I wouldn't be quite as firm as I am with the blade. I would take my time. And by firm I just mean I wouldn't push quite as hard. Alright, that's looking good. I actually kind of want to give a little forward tilt to his hat. I like that idea. So I'm going to take a little scoop out of the middle part, right? Maybe top middle part here. Like so. Just scoop that forward a little bit. Okay, you might have to come back the other side to keep it from, getting chipping out. Because if I just push through and force the blade, I could actually chip the wood. So that's when I'll come in the other side, like so. Just keep going until I get that clean chip. Nice. I'll take a little bit off the back here to get this to kind of bend forward. Okay, I'm going to keep narrowing this just a bit more, and then round the top. Very good. Make that bend. All right. Nice. Alright, moving on. I'm going to set the face in here, but first I want to take the corners off of the bottom as well. I'm just going to cut those off, like so. You can see what I'm doing there. The same thing down here. Alright, looking pretty good. Alright, so it's at this point I want to wrap the hat. I want to continue that line all the way down to the bottom. So keep that turn coming downward. Just little bites. The mistake that people make and how they end up getting themselves into trouble is they end up removing too much at a time. Right? They rush. You get in a hurry. It's easy for me to do that when I'm making a video, but it's even easier for a beginner who just wants to get a project done to push themselves too hard too fast and cut themselves. So just slow down. Slow down. Nice and easy. Okay, so you can see what's happening here. I'm just getting a giant hat on this tiny little head. It's super cute and perfect for kind of a gift if you wanted to make something for your grandkids or your kids or your parents. It's just it's a great little gift for a neighbor or a friend. It's just a simple thing. It's not going to put you out more than a couple of hours. If you're taking your time, it might take you a few more hours. If it's your first time, cut yourself some slack. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to make another marking here. I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch, or say 6 millimeters, from the brim of that hat down. Okay. I'm going to make a little ridge here. This is our usual ridge we create when we're carving the brow. Right? Just like that. And I'm going to carry that across. Notice how it's turning a little bit downward, kind of following the brim of the hat. We want that to be kind of facing downwards a bit. We're kind of turning downward. Alright, very good. Next thing I want to do is come down from the top of the hat about 3/4 of an inch. So what is that, 19 millimeters or so? And so I'm going to draw 3/4 of an inch. And a little bit of a V shape at this mark. So coming up, see the angle? And another angle here. Okay. Now, a good thing to do at this point, and really at any point during a carving, is to kind of make sure that you've kept the center. It's easy to keep the center on the corner of a block when the corner is there, but as this little corner starts to go away, it's going to be harder to keep things nice and square and true. So that's when I just come through and I make sure everything stays square. Alright? So that's a 3/4 inch difference between the top of the hat to the bottom of his nose. And don't get worried if you can't really see what's going on. Just follow along and the shapes will start to take their form and you'll be glad that you were patient and listened. So now I'm going to take a little scoop out of the side of his face, right? So just to make sure that you're clear on what's happening here, the scoop is going to take out material starting from here to here, and it's going to cover this whole area, right? And it's going to do the same thing on this side. So this whole area is going to come out just from a scoop. So I'll show you what the angle looks like, because that might help. Okay, so it's a little scoop, and then you throw the carving. All right, and the same thing here, right? Not a lot of pressure. If you're using a lot of pressure, your blade is probably dull, or you're trying to take too much out at a time. Okay, so you see that? See that little scoop? And that's what we're after. It's a little bit of a challenge, so if you need to practice these scooping cuts on a piece of block, a separate wood, that's going to make things a little bit easier to understand. It's worth doing that. Okay, so there's that. And we're making great progress on this little guy. He's shaping up, and we're only 15 minutes in. So the next thing I want to do is create this little gnome's mustache. So I'm going to come down, oh gosh, probably just 3 or 4 mil, less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Oh, maybe leave a little bit more, 3/16, something like that. And another kind of downward curve. A lot of these downward curves, right? We got brow ridge, we got the brim of the hat, we got the downward curve of the what'll be the mustache. Okay, just like that. All right. Come under the nose, just like that. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, I like that this guy's nose is kind of jutting out the way that it is. I want him to have kind of a bigger nose. I like that effect. I think that looks nice. So, all right, so the next thing I'm going to do is define the kind of sides of his face. And these are just basically the temples of his face. Right, so I need to make sure I get my measurements right here before I get too far. So let me just check that for me. All right, so width of his face, no, about an inch. About an inch of width. So I'll center him at the 1/2 inch mark. And you guys know, what is that? A little over 28 mil. What is an inch? I should know this off the top of my head, but I'm not really good at these sort of conversions. So I'm just going to draw it on the hat because it's easier to see. But anyway, there's that inch mark. I'm not actually going to do it on the hat though. I'm just drawing it on the hat because the ruler was resting in a funky way. But this is the idea, is we're just drawing the sides of the face in about an inch apart. And then we'll go in and cut it. So I'm going to come in, right, just straight in, a little bit, not a lot of depth. Maybe 1/4, say 2 mils of depth, right? Maybe 3. And then I'll come in the opposite direction, like so. Okay, that. And I'll cut a chunk out. So what I'm doing here is I'm defining the temples. So if it sticks, then you need to come up to the top of the hat and then complete the cut. And then it should come pretty clean. Mine's a little bit sticky, but you get the idea. So pay attention to that. If a chip isn't coming out, there's a reason it's not coming out. And it's not that you need to, fiddle with it with your blade, scratch it and scrape it. It means you need to go back over your cuts lightly, and it should give at a certain point that you've completed all your cuts. All right, you see that? Sides of his face set in. Okay. Coming in, defining the hair, like so. Another kind of fun thing to notice is there are 3 kind of flat spots on the forehead. There's got the one flat here, another flat here, and then another flat here. And I like to kind of maintain those flats. Alright, so now we're going to get into one of my favorite cuts, one of the most defining cuts in the face. And I'm going to draw a little V here on the side of his cheek, like so. See that V? Same thing over here. And this is sort of a magical cut because it creates the beard and the mustache boundaries and the cheek all in just a couple of quick cuts. So I'm going to come alongside that cut, light pressure. Again, it's a good time if you haven't already put your glove on. First of all, why? Put your glove on. Second of all, you're likely to stab yourself if you're not wearing a glove at this point because you're doing a lot of plunge cutting. So I'm just coming along the blade like so. Alright, and then I'm going to take my blade, come the opposite direction. This is called a V-cut, right? So I'm coming in. So you could just grab a V-tool and pop it in and get this going, but we're trying to make this as on the cheap, right? So you might not have a V-tool if you're starting out. So this is where you learn knife skills. This is where you learn a V-cut. When I started out as a kid, I didn't have a V-tool to use, so I had to use the knife for these whittle projects, and I learned how to do these sort of basic cuts. I'm not saying that if you can afford a V-tool that you don't get one, but it does teach you grain and control and depth. All right. As I say that as I make a little accidental cut in the top of his hat, so obviously I need some help with control sometimes too. So, all right, so we're in really good shape here. This guy's shaping up. He's got a giant hat. I love his kind of awkward, proportional size to his hat. And let's define the bottom of his mustache. But come on, how simple is that just to define the face? He's already got his little cheeks, he's got his mustache. You can see a lot of what's going on here already. And just a few short cuts. And of course I didn't mean shortcuts. I'm not taking shortcuts. Just taking a little bit out of the bridge of his nose. Alright, so as I was saying before, I'm going to, since he's an elf, gnome, I like the idea of his mustache kind of swinging up like this. So I'm going to do that with the blade. I'm going to just follow that. And again, a lot like we did with the cheek cut earlier, just coming in with the V. So we make one pass, and then we go match that angle, the opposite side. That gives us that little line. Excuse me getting too close to the camera. Make it a little blurry. It should be better now. Alright. So notice how I'm just cutting that out. And the more upturn you give this, if you give it a little bit more upturn like I have here, it's going to make him look happier. Let's define the nostrils. Right? So we're going to go about 1/4 of an inch apart from one another. A little line right at the corners of the nostrils. This is going to be a pretty shallow cut. I'm not going in with a lot of depth. Just going to make a little plunge. Notice I'm not going all the way up the side of the nose. I'm not starting up here and going down. Just at the very bottom. I mean, this is, gosh, 2 millimeters high up the nose that I'm coming in. And then a little triangle cut, like so. See that? So I'll come back in, make sure it's clean. And you see that really simple little triangle cut. Try it again on this side. So straight in. Okay. Go the opposite direction, perpendicular to it. In and down. Again, I'm not going all the way up into here. And then finish that triangle. This is called the triangle cut. I know, shocker. These things, I don't know where they get their names. Some fancy scientists probably in some other foreign countries, and then we're stuck with their crazy names. Triangle cut. What is that? Okay, I get it. My sarcasm isn't so funny, but it's what it is. I'm stuck with it. Okay, so we're in really good shape here. Plugging along. Let's establish the beard a little bit more. Let's get a little bit more shape in there. Just going to come beneath the mouth a little bit here. Make that mustache stand out. Take a little bit out from underneath the mustache in order to get that to pop. So you'll just see him coming around. And I cannot say it enough with a project like this. It's like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And that sounds like jargon, but it's or just hyperbole or not really hyperbole. What's the word I'm looking for? It sounds like nonsense. But it isn't. It really is true that sometimes you end up speeding through a carving and you hurt yourself or you're not happy with it. And really, you've just spent more time in the long run because you have to redo it. So just, take your time. The whole point of this is just to enjoy the process, to have fun, to learn a new skill, to make something, to be creative. So just take your time. Okay, so again, I'm just underscoring that mustache. You can even pop a little hole in there for his mouth. Just a little triangle stop cut, 1, 2, and then pop that out. You can see a little hole in there. That's kind of fun. He'll kind of look like he's snoring. Alright, so there's a lot of angular stuff happening here, so I want to just get rid of those angles. So I'll just cut those out, split those angles up a little bit. It's as simple as that. Just find the corner and cut the corner off. Not any big cuts here, just kind of small, fairly shallow cuts. Just getting rid of any of these corners is all. And this saw mark area here, I don't like to have saw marks on the carving as well. Okay, alright. This guy's kind of adorable in a goofy way. I love his hat. I love how big his hat is. That's my favorite part of this whole thing, is how goofy his hat is. Alright, before we get too far on his face, let's play with the head a little bit more. I'm going to throw a little buckle. I love the idea of a little buckle on his head. I saw a gnome on the internet that someone had drawn, and it had this really cool little buckle. So I'm just going to draw a buckle on there. So it's a rectangle with a band. Okay, so trust me, I'm not a maestro. You can see that I'm not a drawing maestro, but I'm just going to outline the kind of rectangle, go across from the bottom here. Be careful with this edge. You don't want to chip it out. You know, the hat brim is a little bit volatile here because or fragile here because it's right at the edge. End grain. Okay. Well, it's not really end grain, but you get what I'm trying to say. So we'll just establish the buckle. Again, just going in, like so. And then meeting that angle flat against the hat. Hat's, boom. And then getting that chunk out. Alright, and then I'm going to come around, remove a little bit around the buckle to get that buckle to stand out. You could really exaggerate this buckle a lot more than I did. In fact, mine's a little small, but I'm not too worried about it being small at this point. It's not the end of the world. Alright, so I'm going to come around. Not a lot of pressure, just letting the sharp knife do the work. This doesn't need to be a deep cut anyway. Just indicate the top of that strap, the leather strap that's holding that buckle on. Gosh, what the heck were these even for, these buckles? You know, the pilgrims apparently had buckles on their hats. I don't know if that's true, but we always see that on our Thanksgiving holiday junk. I just wonder what the heck a buckle would have been on their hats for. Is it decorative? Is it to tighten up that sucker in case it's too small? Dad gave you his hat, you have a smaller head, you have to grow into it. Tighten that buckle up. Who knows? I'm no historian. In fact, it's highly possible that those never really even existed. I don't know. Alright, so just to find that belt buckle on his head, hat buckle, head buckle, and I'm just going to come on the other side and do the same thing. Otherwise he starts looking like Santa, right? So that's when we come on the other side, we establish that buckle, and we make sure people don't think that he's Santa, because he's not Santa. Wrong season. Alright. going to come along here, get the other side of that buckle strap, just following that line that I have up top, just going just below it. So how thick is this strap? Gosh, I don't know, 2 mils. Okay, so now we're pretty clear on the fact that it's not, you know, it's not Santa, which is good, because nothing against Santa. We're just finally warming up here in Michigan, so that's why I'm so against the idea of it being a Santa right now. It's just finally getting warm here, and even then it's just above freezing, so it's like maybe 10 degrees above freezing today. It's not great, but we'll take it. We're not complaining, that's for sure. Okay, so there's our buckle. It's not much, and you know, I probably should have carved it bigger. In my reference, I had it bigger, but not the end of the world. Now it just looks like he has a headlamp on, which is, I guess that's fine. We'll deal. Style points to any of you who can make this look like it isn't a headlamp. Just make it bigger, I think. At least that's what I'm thinking. Who knows? Alright. Just rounding the hat off, taking the edges off of it. Cool. Okay. He's going to be a peaceful dude. We're not going to make him too complicated as far as the eye structure goes. Just kind of snoozing away. So we're going to come in. This is a really important cut, so pay close attention to this. It's a V cut. There's a little kind of V channel on the inside here that we're going to do. Here and here. This is a very different V cut than we're used to. It's not, I guess, all too much different than some of the plunge cuts we were doing here. It's actually a little bit like that. So it's a mixture. It's almost like a triangle cut. Okay, so we're going to come in, follow those lines, plunge straight in with the blade. See the angle of the blade. And then I'm going to follow that top one. So 2 plunge cuts. A little bit deeper on this bottom one. This bottom V should go in a little further than this other guy. Okay, same thing here. Deep down here. So gosh, probably a full 2 mil. And then up here, maybe a mil. Not quite as much depth. And now I'm going to come in with the blade and just take a little chunk, a triangle. See how that just came right out? And the same thing here. So a little chunk here. See, the blade is almost flat against a piece of wood. It's tilted up just a little bit just to cut that triangle out. Right? And there you go. You've got your little interior corner of the eye. Alright, so now I'm going to take the blade. First I'll draw it out because I don't want this to be, again, this needs to be as simple as possible if we can make it that. So I'm going to come in here with my pencil and draw, this time an actual U, not an upside down U, a real bona fide U. The kind of U that you will probably love because it's not upside down. And then I'm going to come in along that U and open those eyes. Or create that eye. It's going to be a closed eye, so it's not really technically opening the eye, but it's creating those eyes, creating that lower and upper lid kind of meeting, right there at that line. So then I came underneath with the blade, again kind of that scoop cut that we did earlier along the side of the nose, and then I'm taking that into the bottom of that cut. Can you see that? Okay, I'll show you what that looks like on this side. So I'm going to come in, follow that U, make sure that's in line with your other side. Come in, okay, and then pop that sucker out. All right, and already sort of looks like closed eyes. I'm going to take the hard corner off of his eyebrow here. There's like a real hard edge that I don't want to exist. So I'm going to take that hard edge out and that is looking much better. Okay, another way we can make him look happy is if we take this curve, we take the knife and make a little V cut from the smile, because the smile a lot of times will push up the cheeks and will create this line. So it's almost in line with our what am I saying here? Our eyelid cut. And again, see how that kind of makes him look. Can you see that yet? The happy kind of vibes that he's putting out now? Maybe you can't see it yet, but I can. Okay, and I'm just going to take a little scoop out from the top of his eye, like here, just kind of a little tiny flick of the wrist, just a little flick. You can see the tool turning. Okay, this would be a good time to have a toothbrush to kind of wipe him clean. I'm going to go get that. I'll be right back. Alright, so I got the toothbrush now. Sometimes it's actually nice to have a little toothbrush on hand to take care of any little hairs that are just kind of barely hanging on. Of course, if you're a clean enough carver, you really won't even need it, but when you're kind of rushing through these videos, it's or even just carving alone, it's nice to have a little brush to kind of clean things up with. Alright, so moving on here. I'm going to make sure the side of his cheek is defined. Alright, he's looking good. Just going to take a little bit more of the flat spots out of his beard. Again, these corners, anytime you see a strong kind of defined corner, you can take it down in the beard area, because you're not going to see really hard shapes in the beard other than as we get into the kind of shaping phase, we'll probably create a little separation, like these kind of V grooves at the base, because as hair moves away from its origin, it tends to get get further and further apart from each other, the groupings of hair. So it's nice to put a little cut at the outside edges of the hairline. You could do this with a gouge if you had one. But so long as you're just getting them in there, getting those grooves in there, it's going to make your hair look a lot more like hair and not just kind of like a snowball wrapped around his face. And just a little asymmetry is also nice, so you can take a little bit more out of one side. So say on this side I decide to hollow it out a little. Oh, got a little chirping happening there. And then on this side I'll have it kind of more rounded over. This will make for a little bit more of a movement in the beard, kind of make it look like it's turning a little more. And that's always good. Okay. Alright, so I'm not a clean carver, right? Let's talk about that for a second. You've got a lot of guys out there who are very, very clean carvers, right? Especially, you've got Doug is somebody who you'll watch and you'll see him do these really clear, concise cuts, and there won't be any fuzz, there won't be a lot of hairs. The placement is really good. You can just tell that he's been a seasoned, he's been knife-only carving, in addition to other types, but knife-only carving for so long that it's just instinctual to him, the depths, and I'm not like that. So I do like to use, I like to use a little bit of sandpaper sometimes. Occasionally I'll go over it with a brush. My favorite thing is just to leave them as raw and natural as possible. So sometimes I'll leave a little roughness in the carvings, just so people know it's handmade. They're not confused about that. But, alright. You can hear that semi-truck backing up. Or a garden truck, whatever. Okay. So we've got those eyes set in pretty nicely. There's more stuff to deal with on the face. We can play with nostrils really quickly, just for a moment, and then I'll just touch on it. There's a lot more that we could say about nostrils than what I'm going to say now, but I'm just going to create a little bit of a curve to define the nostril flare. So I'm just coming around, hopefully you can see that little drawing, and creating a little sliver of material that comes out of the nose, so like so. Just like so. Right? See how that the chunk came out like so? Nice big nostrils. He's a big-nosed man. So I'll do the same thing here. Draw the nostrils in here. And then I'll just take a little bit more out of this. And then come across the opposite direction. Just like that, we've defined the nostrils. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. These are good nostrils. His nose is pushed forward pretty far. It's a little bit caricaturized. If I was doing a little bit more of an even more realistic version of him, I'd probably take his nose and not push it out quite so much. The nostrils are almost on the outside of the center of his face. So I'm just taking a little turn, just turning the nostrils into the ball of his nose, like so. Alright, so let's button up the hair, and then we'll move on to kind of finishing touches. We'll just put a little paint on him and call him a day. So the next thing I want to do here is, we talked about it, is break up the beard. And now it's so easy to go ham with the detail tools way too early. And so what I'm kind of a fan of is when you can kind of get the big shapes cut out early on, and then you go back in and detail, and that will give you such a good result. So we want to get these big chunks in first, and then we'll come back in and we'll create these smaller details, these refined kind of little cuts that will make up the hair. And even then, I don't want those cuts to be too numerous, so that they, I'm not trying to carve each and every individual hair, is all I'm saying. So it's just keeping in mind that you don't want to overdo these sort of fine details. And if, to make an argument, to make my case, look at some of the Baroque, some of the sculpture coming out of I guess the Middle Ages. The really good sculpture, a lot of it, even if you look back earlier, Michelangelo, the way hair is often represented is in groupings. Not each individual hair, it's just major groupings. So that's what we're focused on here. So I got a few kind of random cuts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of deep cuts in there, sticking to odd numbers. See how they're not exactly apart. These ones are kind of close together. These two are far apart. This one's right next to that. Right, so it's random. I'm going to come in with my my veiner here, and you could use a palm tool for this. In fact, I would recommend, if you could, just use a palm tool for this, because it's going to be a problem if you have a full-size handle and you're not used to it if you're just starting out. So, and also it looks like my veiner needed to be polished. It's not quite as sharp as I was hoping it would be, but this is real life, and I could edit this part out, but you're going to have to deal with this. So maybe it's a good reminder. Who knows? Maybe it's a good reminder to get the strop out and polish your tool. And just to show you that you really do not need the really advanced, sharpening systems. This does a pretty good job. If something's really damaged and you don't want to sit there all day with the polisher, you can take it to the to the more advanced, specialized tools, and that can really help, speed things up. But you can do a lot with just a strop. So I'm using this strap has a specific kind of corner, so I can get the inside bevel a little bit as well of this veiner. This is the 3mm veiner, which is nice. And I'm just rolling it. You can see I'm just rolling the tool and with my fingers as I drag it across. You can see, hopefully that's a little better. It's actually got a pretty deep problem. Most kind of not so significant problems can be taken care of, but if you've got a problem like this one does, you might have to take it to a buffer or a polisher. So I'm going to go do that. Alright, well, you know, that was a bad example of a stropping situation, because even with the fancy tools, I wasn't able to fix it. I have to regrind that one. It must have gotten dropped. But anyway, this is the same size veiner, 3mm veiner. So I'm just going to come in with this little guy. The big thing here to pay attention to is I don't want too straight of cuts, because even straight hair, I love to do this when I have in-person classes, because there's always somebody in there who raises their hand when I say, you know, who has straight hair in this room, and I always love pointing out to folks that the guy doesn't really have totally straight hair. Oh, sorry about the focus. Let me fix that. You know, there's curve, there's movement to his or her hair, and most people just don't notice that because they're not looking at the, you know, they're not looking at the details. They're not looking at the kind of totality of the situation. They're just seeing, you know, straight hair. But yeah, it's definitely true that, you know, people with hair that doesn't have curl to it, it still doesn't lay perfectly straight. It's got a little movement to it, less than a curly-haired person, of course. You know, granted, but you know, it's definitely got a little curve to it. So that's what I'm introducing here with my tool. Notice that when I'm moving it through the wood, it's moving like so. It's moving so that it's not quite just going straight through the wood. It's going to be a problem if you do that. As far as I'm concerned, it's a mistake. So I'm just coming along here, and I'm giving him some detail. We don't need to go too crazy again with hair detail here. Just give him some little separation. And even this gouge has got a little scratch in it, but it's doing a lot better than that other one was. That guy needs to get taken back to the grindstone. Okay. Coming up to that mustache. If you didn't cut that mustache line deep enough, you might get a chip out when you go up to it. But notice that my left and right hand are working together throughout this project to control the blade. So I've got my left and my right hand on the blade at all times. It's giving me a little resistance, a little control. So I've actually got my hand gripping it tightly, my right hand, and my left hand is holding the wood, but then also pushing against my other hand, right? So it's offering resistance, and that's what's giving me so much control. It's giving, you know, the power of the right hand is driving. It's kind of like leverage, but then the other hand is kind of the resistance or the control. You gotta have resistance in your hand cutting. You know, most of your cuts, unless you're a very, very advanced carver, you do need to have a level of, you know, both hands contacting the carvings, the carving for most situations. Not every situation, of course. This is not, you know, most rules, you know, don't hold true in every situation. It's like saying, you know, what's the best move in chess, right? There's no best move in chess. You know, it depends on the situation. But that being said, many of the cuts that I'm making, you'll notice, now that I pointed out, are made with resistance, a left and right hand touching each other, giving me a little bit more control. Actually, I should say a lot more control. A lot more control than if I wasn't doing that. Okay. So I've gone crazy with hair detail. We can give him a little mustache hair as well. Do a little separation in the middle and just give him some little grooves here. Then you can use the knife to create a little bit more of a jagged edge. I like to do that sometimes with the knife. Come in after I'm done with the V or the veiner and kind of break things up a little bit. So just a little cut, kind of separate the mustache at the ends. That way make it a jagged kind of cut. Just like that. Okay. And we're very, very close to having a finished carving here. One thing I'd like to do, of course, before we wrap up the carving portion of this, and get into just a really quick, simple paint job, is I'd like to just come in and undercut the hat. So this is where I'll come in. Just make sure we're in focus here. Come in and create a little stop cut all the way around his head. Okay, and I'll relieve that cut, like so. It should pop right out. If it doesn't pop out, don't get impatient, don't push harder. Just go back over your cut, and then if that doesn't work, go the opposite way. The other, because there's two parts that make a V cut. There's your initial cut, and then there's that secondary angle that matches it, the initial one. And you just keep going back and forth over those cuts. Alright, so I'm just creating that undercut. That undercut's going to give you that kind of hilarious sense that this hat is way too big on the guy, and also make it look separate from his head and less like a cheap toy that you bought and more like a piece of artwork that you handmade for somebody. Beautiful, beautiful craft that you worked hard at. Okay, and I don't really care about the distinction of art and craft. I mean, I do to an extent, right? Because when Lewis, what is it, Lewis Nizer or whoever it was, I don't know who said it, but when you put your heart into something, that's when it becomes an art form. You put your head into it, you put your heart into it, and that's why it is important, I think, to kind of take these little projects your own direction. Once you've done one or two of these, it's a great idea just to play around with the design and make his hat smaller, make it bigger, change his facial structure, bigger nose, smaller nose. All of these things are add up to make a carving unique. And you're going to do things. You might even copy this project and find that you just, in attempt to copy me, get something that looks totally different. Well, that is your style. You're finding your style by trying. And I just want to congratulate you that if you've tried this project, that even if you are an amateur, that you've had the courage to do that. Most people don't have the courage to even try something. And the fact that you gave it a shot and you really made an attempt at doing something that you've never really done before, assuming you haven't done this particular project, which I can guarantee you haven't, because neither have I. And if you're copying this project to a T, this is something that's never existed before in its exact form, right? It might sound semantic, but this is a unique thing. Every piece that you make, because it's handmade, is totally unique, right? Even if it's a copy of someone else's. So I guess that's my point, is just enjoy yourself and realize that if it doesn't look like mine, great. Yeah, you'll grow, you'll improve your techniques, and you'll get your own understanding of how to do things. But that's the beauty of this whole thing, is you get to represent yourself and find what it is that you like and what you love, and that's what makes your craft, I think, makes it an art form. It's like doing it in a way that is expressing you. And so maybe that's hoity-toity, I don't know, but I don't think it is. Alright, guys, this is pretty much where I want it to be as far as the carving goes. I mean, we could really get fancy with this, but I want to keep it nice and simple. And why don't we get to the painting part? Oh, I'm embarrassed. I almost forgot that we have to put a little nostril in there. I'm going to come in with a little scoop cut. Notice that I'm angling the blade. I'm angling the blade slightly upward when I'm going in. So notice that angle as I'm coming alongside. And then coming even more at an angle below that to get that chip to come out. That's all I'm doing when I say carving the nostril. I'm not going too crazy here, carving a lot out, just a little sliver indication that there's a nostril there. That's it. Okay, anyway, to painting we go. Okay, we've got our glass palette, and you know, I've linked in the description the various types of paint that I'm using here. I much prefer, put it on record, the oil paints, but I'm using some of the better acrylic paints because they're just so much easier to clean up. It's a lot less, you know, chemically dangerous. It's just all the way around easier to deal with. It dries faster. And it's cheaper. So this is Liquitex. Again, I've linked this in the description below. Actually, I just picked up the palette. I'll put that in the description too, because I like the neutral gray. The gray helps the color stand out a little bit more. You can kind of see it more accurately. So I'm going to put a touch of the green on here. It's a blue shade green. I don't know how to say that. Phthalocyan. Actually, I did a better job of saying that than I thought I would. And a little bit of, this is Naphthol Crimson, aka red. And then I'm going to do just some white here. I went a little heavy. I'd start out with a little less than that, but first thing I do, I'm going to mix the red and the brown together to get a little bit of a brownish black color. More of a brownish than a black. Okay. And that's going to give me his hat color. I want to add just a little tiny bit of more, let's see, do I have any, just add a little bit more green to this. Just to make a little contrasting color for his buckle. Slightly more green there. Okay. Alright, so, and then finally, I'm going to take a little bit of just a touch of yellow and add that to the brown for another tone for his beard. Okay, so this is Yellow Light Hansa. Now these are actually weird names. I don't know where they're getting these from, but oh. I'll take just a little bit of yellow, mix it over here. I'm no color expert, so this may not work out. Yeah, it's a little greener than I wanted it to be. I'm going more for a brown. So you color experts out there are probably yelling at me like, do this or do that. A little red. So we're giving him a brown beard. So we'll start dark, and then I'll do a little touch of a highlight after that. A little bit more of a light tone, like almost like a gray. That'll contrast that too. So this will be like the base coat, the dark, and then we'll work to the light. Okay, so I'm going to get a little water in my brush. This is a round. It's probably 1/8 inch round. I like to use rounds, but squares are good too. Doesn't really matter all that much as long as they're decent quality. You know. And even if they're cheap, I mean, gosh, this is not rocket science here. It's not the end of the world if it's a little too, you know, if the bristles are cheap or fall out, you know. So I'm going to take a little bit of this brown, just a touch of this brown here. And I'm going to go on his hat. Might water it down just a little bit more. You know what I almost forgot? Is spraying this sucker. You know, the most important step here to make sure things don't leach too much is to spray them with clear. So anyway, see, it goes to show you I get so caught up in things I forget steps sometimes, but it's okay. I'm going to throw a little poly on it. It's a water-based poly spray by Minwax. I've got that in the description below as well. I'm just going to spray that outside really quick and then I'll be back. You know, as I was working on this clear coating it, I thought to myself, you know, one thing I thought about doing to this that I think would really improve the face. I think this is kind of a pro tip, is to use a little bit of sandpaper as a way of taking off the hard edges of your carving. Now you could just leave the hard edges on the face, but I think using just a little bit of sandpaper will bring this up and make this look really nice. So of course my clear coat is pretty much dry now, and I can come in. You want to make sure it's dry, and I'm going to come in with sandpaper and just take any of the real hard edges down, and that's going to make him look more skin-like, and I really like the effect. The important thing to note here is I'm not doing that to the beard or the hair or anything else. I'm not doing it to the hat. I'm just giving a little textural contrast to the face. So notice how much nicer that face looks when I just come in with the sandpaper, smooth out those rough edges, the rough cuts, and it just makes things look really clean and skin-like. So I'm just folding it up into a triangle like this, and we're just working into these corners. Just like that. I'll just keep folding in different spots to make sure I've got it in a fresh spot. And then going around. Alright. Very good. Use that toothbrush to clean things off. And because I already sprayed the guy and I'm not going to do much to the face, we can continue our painting. So anyway, back to that kind of purplish tone. Almost brown is what we were going for, but it gave us a little bit of a purple, so I'm going to add a little bit of red. Usually if you can mix two primary colors, you're going to get brown. But yeah, we're just a little off balance here, so we'll just mix it in a little bit more. That's better. Alright, I'm going to give him that hat. Brownish hat. And I'm diluting it because I don't want it to look too solid. I definitely don't want to create that sort of plastic look, right? So we're going to avoid that at all costs. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit heavier with the paint, the brown, because it looks like we got a little bit more of a dark shade spot on the hat than I wanted initially because of that spray. Okay, so it might be a little darker on the head, a little darker than we wanted because of our initial coat. That's okay. Just getting a little shade. Now normally, again, I would not go this heavy with paint, but again, we made a little boo-boo and we added the finish a little too early before we put the clear coat on. Could have carved it off, but this is going to work. This is going to be okay. Alright, so I'm going to take a little bit more of this kind of brown color and hit the bottom of the brim. Like so. And then go underneath as well, hit that. Add a little water. Okay. So it really soaked in that one spot, so I'm going to have to add a little bit more color just to make sure that that block that we initially created is not distracting, that's all. Okay, so a little heavier than I normally would on the paint. It's almost a blackish brown. Alright, now I'm going to do a base, a thinned down version of that, that brown. I think it's going towards the purple because we've got kind of a bluish green here. And we do not want green happening on the beard, so we're just going to make sure that we're on the right side of that mixture. And it just takes playing around sometimes to really see what you got. Going back and forth, a little too far one way and then a little too far the other. Just kind of figuring out what the color should be. And if anything, we can go a little bit more towards the red side. That's going to be okay. Okay, so I'm going to do a real dilute kind of grayish red for a base coat for the beard. And then we're going to hit some highlights on that beard. You know, truth be told, I'm not loving this color, but we're a little far along now. That's all right. You know, if I was starting out again, and you know, if I was painting this over with, you know, all over again, I would try another primary color mix to get a different little shade of brown. But this is where we are, and it's not the end of the world. It's kind of a grayish tone for his beard, which is cool. I'm actually totally fine with it. Bluish grayish tone. It's going to contrast well with the highlight that we throw on there as well. So again, I'm just working that in as a base color. And then I'm going to just throw a tiny bit up on his eyebrow area, just a little bit. Just to make him look a little bit more put together, more finished. Give him those heavy eyebrows, like so. Those old men, a lot of times, have those really crazy heavy eyebrows. Okay, wipe that off. I'm going to go into a little bit of that gray highlight color that we were using there. It looks a little dry. I might have to mix up a little bit more. Let's do that. Let's mix up a little bit of the white. Like so. A little bit more white to create a little bit of a situation. A little bit more of a highlight situation. Alright. Wash that off. And I'm just going to take a little bit of it, just dry brush it on. Keep a cloth around or a paper towel or tissue or whatever. To go in that medium gray color first. And just dry brush that on. Like so. Got a couple of spots that I missed here. I'm just going to come up and clean those up a little. white spots showing through. Okay, get a little bit of that white highlight there, and then just touching that white makes that beard really pop. And we'll even do a little on the eyebrow as well. Alright. And it's easy to get carried away with a dry brush, but if our highlights are too strong, it kind of muddles the low lights, you know, the darks. so we don't want to do that. So I got to be careful not to. Okay, and that's kind of fun, kind of cute. I'm going to take just a little bit of the yellow, tiny bit of yellow, mostly watered down, and I'm going to do that buckle, create that gold color. I don't really know exactly what goes into gold, so I'm not even going to pretend. We can try it. I think it's going to make more of an orange, but we can try it, add a little red to it. That's a little better, yeah. Kind of a orangey yellow. Better than nothing, huh? Just go over that buckle. Kind of gold it up a little. Doesn't have to be stark gold, just kind of brighten it up. And I'll take that green color and I'll get that band going. Actually, let's go more towards the reddish brown. I changed my mind. Let's go more towards the reddish brown, almost like a leather tone for that strap. Let's do that. Yeah, I like that better. Almost like a leather. And again, my painting skills are nowhere near that of many of the other carvers that you'll see on YouTube during these projects. I'm really more of a novice painter than many. You know, I'm not as good at staying in the lines, but you know, carving is really what I do mostly, and very little whittling even. And so doing these projects is always kind of relaxing to me, because it's, you know, it's just a whole kind of more, you know, in many ways it's kind of a simplified version of what I do on a daily basis. But in other ways, you know, it's actually pretty different. And so it's just a wonderful, like, little break from carving big stuff or doing realistic naturalism or whatever. So, all right. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Oh, and quickly, before I forget, if you want to learn how to do more of the realism that I talked about, the stuff that I do in my day-to-day, the stuff that I sell, then check out the online carving school. There's a resource at the end, this tag here, called Online Wood Carving School, and there's a whole bunch of stuff elsewhere as well, so check that out.